This is Jocko Podcast number 69 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
The President of the United States takes pride in presenting the Medal of Honor posthumously to Captain Henry T. Elrod, United States Marine Corps, for service as set forth in the following citation. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life, above and beyond the call of duty while attached to Marine Fighting Squadron 211 during action against the Japanese land, surface, and aerial units at Wake Island from 8 to 23 December 1941. Engaging vastly superior forces of enemy bombers and warships on 9 and 12 December, Captain Elrod shot down 2 of a flight of 22 hostile planes and, executing repeated bombing and strafing runs at extremely low altitude and close range, succeeded in inflicting deadly damage upon a large Japanese vessel, thereby sinking the first major warship to be destroyed by small caliber bombs delivered from a fighter-type aircraft. When his plane was disabled by hostile fire and no other ships were operative, Captain Elrod assumed command of one flank of the line, set up in defiance of the enemy landing, and conducting a brilliant defense, enabled his men to hold their positions and repulse determined enemy attacks, repeatedly proceeding through intense hostile fusillades to provide covering fire for unarmed ammunition carriers. Capturing an automatic weapon during one enemy rush in force, he gave his own firearm to one of his men and fought on vigorously against the Japanese. Responsible in a large measure of the strength of his sector's gallant resistance, on 23 December, Captain Elrod led his men with bold aggressiveness until he fell mortally wounded. His superb skill as a pilot, daring leadership, and unswerving devotion to duty distinguished him among the defenders of Wake Island. And his valiant conduct reflects the highest credit upon himself and the United States Naval Service. He gallantly gave his life for his country. Signed, Harry S. Truman. And that is the Medal of Honor citation for Henry Talmadge Elrod, the first aviator in World War II to be awarded the Medal of Honor, and the first man to sink a warship from a fighter plane during the Battle of Wake Island. And if you don't know anything about the Battle of Wake Island, it began simultaneously with the attack on Pearl Harbor when that started, and it ended on 23 December 1941 when American forces were forced to surrender. And that was with around 500 American servicemen. And they had a handful of coastal artillery pieces and a handful of anti-aircraft guns, and they had 12 aircraft. And what they were facing was 2,500 Japanese infantry, supported by 3 light cruisers, 8 destroyers, 2 patrol boats, 2 troop transports, 2 aircraft carriers with all their planes, and 2 heavy cruisers. So they were completely outnumbered and completely and utterly outgunned. But they held out for 15 days. And while they were under that siege, on the 20th of December, while the Japanese were preparing for their final attack, Major Elrod got out one last letter to his wife. And I'm going to read that to you. Saturday, 20 December 1941. My dearest, darling sweetheart, I never suspected this afternoon when I wrote my other short note that I would be sitting down writing another tonight. But here we are. I just got in a few minutes ago and have just learned that Walt Baylor is returning, and he has kindly consented to deliver this personally. So I am very thankful for the moment. Of course, there isn't a lot of news that I can write about. And you probably know more real news than I do anyhow. I am missing you terribly, and I am undergoing a few new experiences. But also is everyone else. We've had considerable rain today, and it is still cloudy. The wind has been very low, however. The weather on the whole is nothing to complain about. But I would like to see a good old-fashioned typhoon sweep this entire area. I imagine there's an awful lot of whitewashing going on now in high places. It certainly will be a criminal shame if they succeed in covering over everything. I am writing this in something of a hurry and under somewhat difficult circumstances. I'll think of a million things that I should have said after I had gone to bed tonight. But now I am going to say that I love you and you alone, always, and repeat it a million times or so. Give my love to Mary also. Between the two of you, you have it all. There isn't any for anyone else. I know that you are praying for me, and I have nothing more to ask than that your prayers be answered. Yours devotedly and loving, Talmadge. And so I think it's important that when you hear that letter, you recognize the fact that this is a man. And of course, we always remember that these men, we call them heroes. Deservedly so. We do that to honor them. But I think it's important to always remember that these heroes, they're people. They're people. And these men, these heroes, these Marines, these people that held the line. They held the line for 15 days before they were forced to surrender after losing 49 Marines killed, 2 missing in action, 3 Navy personnel killed, 70 U.S. civilians killed. And by the way, the Japanese losses were recorded at about 820 killed with over 300 wounded. 2 destroyers lost, and almost 30 Japanese aircraft shot down or damaged. But the odds and the ratio of force was just stacked against the U.S. forces on Wake Island. And when you get into a situation like that, a dire situation, a violent situation, a situation where you are facing a determined enemy, there is a bond that forms between people, regardless of where they're from or what their background is or what their socioeconomic class is or what service they were in. None of that matters. There's a bond that forms that cannot be broken. And we certainly had that in the Battle of Ramadi. U.S. Army soldiers United States Marines, Seabees, our SEALs of Task Unit Bruiser. All of us that were in that fight had that bond. We were brothers.